Hello, warriors. Thanks for tuning in to the Invisible Diaries, where we shed light on invisible and chronic illnesses through community support, education, and advocacy. Welcome to episode, let's see, I think this is going to be episode 10. We're a little backed up, so this is episode 10. I'm your host, Misty, and today we're talking about anorexia recovery and hydrocephalus with Britta, who I'm going to introduce in just a minute. And as always, a quick disclaimer, anything mentioned in today's episode is strictly for informational purposes only and not meant to treat, diagnose, or cure disease. Also, we know battling chronic illness can be difficult, so if you find that you or a loved one are in need or need someone to talk to, please reach out to a trusted resource, or if you're in the U.S., you can call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 1-800-273-8255, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All right, now let's get started. So go ahead and I'm going to introduce my special guest, which is Britta, and she's going to go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about herself.
Hello. Thanks for having me on here. I'm so excited.
Yay, me too.
This is literally one of my favorite podcasts. So when you asked me, I was like, duh.
That's awesome. Yeah, I thought you would be great. You have such an amazing story and so much valuable information to share.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so a little bit about me. I'm 29 years old. I live in Melbourne.
Florida.
Florida, yeah. I wish it was Australia, but it's not.
Right?
So I have been in recovery from anorexia for about 3.5 years, and it's been definitely quite the journey. It's an understatement.
So when did you, well, actually, I'm going to ask when that all started later. Let me have you finish introducing yourself. Sorry, I jumped the gun. I'm so excited to hear more. Okay.
I mean, it is a part of my story, so I don't blame you. I currently work for myself, so I teach yoga, which has been a huge outlet for me, so I really enjoy teaching. I teach at a local studio and on the beach, which, you've been to my class.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really enjoy that. I also work in network marketing, so I really enjoy it, making my own schedule.
That's great. And you just started doing that this year. It was your birthday gift to yourself, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Yeah. No more waiting tables.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll start with the hydrocephalitis. Did I say that right?
Close. It's hydrocephalus.
Hydrocephalus. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
See, I got to learn this too. That's why I love having special guests on the show, because, I don't know everything, of course, and someone who has been through the experience and knows a little more insight, it's great because you can share this information, and someone else may have been newly diagnosed,
right?
Or maybe they, after listening to the show, might realize it's something that they might look into. So tell me a little bit about hydrocephalus.
So when I first got diagnosed with it, I was the same way. I was like, wait, what? Can you say that one more? I remember the doctors telling my mom and then I had asked my mom 50 times, how do you say it? How do you say it? But it was actually, so it can come in 2 different forms. It's a defect of the brain. So in your brain, you have 4 tubes, 2 on each side. They're called ventricular tubes, and they run around your brain and then down to your spine. It's what pumps spinal fluid. And one of mine is punctured.
Wow.
So it doesn't flow like it should. And there's 1 of 2 ways that can happen. So 1, it can be a birth defect and you've lived with it your whole life. Or 2, it could be onset by a car accident or some kind of head trauma. Mm-hmm. So come to find out, mine was a birth defect, but what had kind of triggered it, and when I got diagnosed with it, I ended up at Shands because we didn't know what it was. I was doing the aerial yoga, the silks upside down.
Oh.
And it took me no time upside down to get vertigo. And I had it for 3 days straight. I couldn't walk. It was so bad.
Wow.
So we went up to Shands and saw a neurosurgeon, a neurologist, an ophthalmologist, and that's when they found out it was a birth defect. So it's just something I live with. I have to be mindful of it, going upside down with yoga. I can't go upside down very long. I have to be really careful with headaches and migraines, things like that. So,
okay. So have you ever had symptoms before, or was that just kind of like the first time it really just hit you?
That was really the first time it hit me. And I think what really offset that was, I don't think I know I wasn't getting all the nutrients I need, because it was right in the time where I was like at my thinnest point in the anorexia when I got these symptoms and all that. And the treatment for it, if you do have it, like from a car wreck or something like that, they put a shunt in. So it's brain surgery, and they put the shunt in so it flows better. So.
Okay, yeah, that was my next question. So you are fortunate to not have to get a shunt. Is that something that you might need in the future? How do you manage it and like keep an eye on it, you know?
It's just something I'm mindful of. I have to go now it's every 2 years for a full brain scan and a checkup at Shands. But, it's basically, you have to be your own advocate. So if I have a lot of migraines, I need to go get it checked out. Or, if I'm feeling a lot of that full head pressure, then I need to go get it checked out.
Now, was this a CT scan, an MRI? What kind of scan did they do?
I don't know. I just know it was of the full brain, because initially they just did it of the pituitary gland, because I was having like hormonal issues, and they saw something. So then they did the full body scan. What is the difference between a CT scan and an MRI?
Well, I think the MRI is magnetic, because you're not allowed to you can't have certain things my pacemaker, for example, is MRI compatible, but like in the past couldn't have any metals.
Gotcha.
And the CT is, you know what, I should look this up next time so I'm a little more familiar. It's like kind of like an X-ray, but it's just a little more advanced. But I think with the MRI, you can do the contrast and you get a fuller image. So, I could be totally wrong.
Yeah.
Nobody hold me to that.
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah. Okay, so now before that, so I guess my first question would be, at what point, like what age, what point in your life did the anorexia begin?
I would say I've struggled with an eating disorder of some form for a long time. Definitely in my teens, it was more overeating. It was more like eating for comfort and off of emotion, how I would kind of cope. And then right out of high school, I was towards the end of high school, right out of high school, I wasn't like huge, but I was definitely overweight. And so I just decided once I got out of school that I was going to really get healthy, like super slow. And it started out for the first year super healthy. Like the first month I cut out soda, and then the next month I didn't do as much fast food, and I went to the gym, and I was like the epitome of health. And then I took it to an obsession. So by the age of, I would say 20, from 20 until 26, when I started recovery, was the full-blown like anorexia. Wow. I wasn't eating. I didn't have a period for 6 years. Like, it was bad. Yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting, because everyone has different stories, and I feel like, some people who don't really understand this or how it works, like, it's really easy to to start somewhere and for it to just kind of get out of control. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand is, it could start with just like you're eating a lot of comfort food, or that you're trying to get healthier, and then people do tend to have addicted personalities. Like, we all do. I don't care who you are, we're addicted to something. And if it's not, drugs, it could be going to the gym, it could be your phone. And so people don't realize that, if you trade one thing, maybe you trade alcohol for something else. There's always something else, and so you got to really be mindful of where that could lead.
Yeah, it's like being careful not to trade out one for the other.
Right.
And I know for me, it was definitely, I think for most people, it's a control thing. But for me, and I know a lot of other people I've met that struggle with eating disorders, the base of it, the root of it is trauma.
Right.
So it's a way of coping and controlling when like everything else in your life is either out of control or you don't know how to cope with the emotions of the trauma. And you know, it's a hard thing to understand, and I think people really underestimate, you know, the severity of eating disorders. Like anorexia,
Absolutely.
specifically anorexia, is the number one cause of death for mental health.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
it's
crazy. I didn't know that.
it's insane.
Wow. So when you know, yours, as most are associated with trauma, would you say, like, I mean, I obviously you don't really know that in the beginning when you first start
Mm-mm.
going through it. So like, at what point in your life, like, was it with a therapist that did it hit you that like, oh my God, I have this behavior that I've created to cope with XYZ.
Oh yeah. So when I started recovery, it was actually the second therapist I went to because it didn't work out with the first one. Again, eating disorders are really complex, so you have to really have a good therapist, and it took me forever to find one in this area.
Yeah.
But when I met with her, one of the first things we did, like one of my first assignments, was to make a timeline of my life and write down all the things that I remember bad and good. And I could not get past this trauma of age 9. So I talked to
Wow.
her about it, and just kind of, it was like the first time I had voiced it and really talked about it in relation to the eating disorder. And I literally felt like it just clicked in my head. I was like, oh my
Wow.
gosh, this is what I've been avoiding.
Yeah, and I don't think people realize that connection, that like mentally and emotionally to, you know, to behavior. So like this whole, I'm going to share like a random weird story um just to kind of give an example, but you know, for a long time I had a phobia of cows. Like I was so scared of them, and I lived in Missouri, so I remember like I'd meet my friend halfway like from our houses, and I had to walk down this like, you know, dirt road where there's cows on each side, and like, I mean, I felt like my heart was racing, like I couldn't breathe. Um and I mean, it followed me to, you know, even to my adulthood, and I just had this weird thing with cows. They just freaked me out, and it was odd. Well, it wasn't until I took like my first psychology class in college. I think I was like 19 or something like that. And we were going over like phobias and how they're attached to something traumatic. So I was like, okay, let's see. What do I have a phobia? Cows. And then I realized, I'm like, what could be associated with that? So then I realized, like, when I was about 8 years old, maybe 9, I lived on the highway in Missouri, and one of our cows got loose, and so my entire family, they were trying to chase the cow, and all of a sudden I see this like semi truck just slam its brakes on, which is, you know, a huge truck and a pretty huge scene to see, and I couldn't see my family. I just knew it hit something, and I just like fell to the floor screaming. Like I thought my whole family got like hit by this truck. It was the cow, but
Aww.
you know, it was like a really traumatic thing for a kid, and they had to, you know, the one sheriff in the town had to come and shoot the cow, and it was just like crazy. So I
Aww.
didn't realize over this time that I was associating this this feeling that I had. It never connected this whole time, like, you know,
Yeah.
from childhood to being 19, 20 years old. So it just kind of goes to show how powerful trauma can affect our brain and our behavior,
Oh yeah.
for sure. Okay, so now you were talking about, you said you didn't have your period for a while, and the reason I'm bringing that up is because a lot of people, you know, even if you don't have any type of eating disorder, I want to just talk about how powerful and important nutrition is, and the deficiencies, you know, because that's like something that happens when you are severely deficient. You know, you have these symptoms and like losing your period. What other kind of issues did you have? from anorexia?
So I had a lot of kind of like in the moment issues, and then also long-term issues. So while I was going through it, I mean, I'm 5'9", almost 5'9", like 5'8", 5'9". And I got down to 84 pounds. And my body was literally just deteriorating. Like I would get getting heart palpitations and passing out was like, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to pass out. Here I go. Like, It was just like a routine thing. I knew it was coming. My hair was like stick thin. Everything was like sunken in, and had no energy. I barely had energy to like walk across the house.
Wow.
I was mad and angry at everyone because the more people were concerned and asking me, the more pissed I got. Because that's not what I wanted to hear. But so not only did my period stop, but I developed osteoporosis from it.
Wow.
Yeah, it started to, like I would get, I mean, like I would randomly start sweating, and then the next second I would be cold. Like I had circulation issues. Digestion, that was another thing. The thing that's hard is when you only consume like either no calories or like 200 calories a day, over all those years, when you try to add that back in, it doesn't work. Like,
Wow.
So the first 3 to 6 months, I was on a 35 to 5,000 calorie minimum a day without any activity. I got
that
IV.
Must have been hard.
It was so tough, especially because when you're so thin like that, when you start putting on weight, it all goes to your stomach. So you're not proportionate, and you just feel pregnant.
Wow.
Or like really big in your stomach, and that's like your worst fear. And that's why a lot of people relapse in anorexia recovery, because they can't stand to see that, or even that feeling of all that food in their body. So, you know, I got to a point where my organs just started slowly shutting down. And eventually it just all came to a halt when I was 26. I believe I just turned 26. My heart completely stopped.
That's crazy. So tell me more about that. So where were you? How did it happen? Who was there? What'd they do? Tell me all of that.
So it's kind of like an in and out memory, because I was so like out of it. But like I said, at the time, passing out was completely normal. Like I'd like clockwork. So I had actually just eaten like a decent amount, or what I considered a decent amount. It wasn't a decent amount at all. And it was probably like 11 o'clock at night. So I was getting ready for bed, and I started to feel that like heart palpitation and like I'm going to pass out thing. But it felt different. Like everything felt heavier, and it would like my heart started to beat really fast, and then it started to get further and further apart. Like I couldn't catch my breath. Like I couldn't take full breaths. And so at the time I was living at my parents' house, and I was in my room, and I just remember being like, I don't want to pass out in my room by myself and nobody know. So I like staggered out into the hallway, and I got maybe like halfway to the bathroom, and then I just yelled for my stepdad, because he was awake late watching TV. And I don't even remember him coming over. I just remember like holding the frame of the door and like sliding down it. And then I just went black. And then I had a flash, like my eyes open for like a second, and I was on the couch, and my stepdad had my head in his hands, and like I just remember my eyes rolling in the back of my head. Like I couldn't keep them open. I couldn't hold my head up. And he was like, Brittany, just stay with me. I do remember him saying, breathe like you do in yoga.
Oh, wow.
And and then again, it was just black. So he, I guess, yelled for my mom, and they were freaking out. And eventually we ended up at the doctor's, the emergency room, and I had like a bunch of IVs put in and everything like that, a bunch of tests ran and all that. And the doctor came in and pretty much told me, I don't know if you realize, but like, you should not have made it.
Wow.
And he even said, like, he kept trying to revive me for the simple fact of the terrified look on my mom's face.
Wow.
And that hit me like a ton of bricks. And that was really when I came face to face with, okay, I have to make the decision of either I'm going to start recovery today or I'm going to die, like, tomorrow. So I know a lot of people that are in eating disorder recovery don't have that profound of a moment to really make it clear to them. And as terrifying as it was, I wouldn't take it back because I don't think I would have taken my recovery as seriously thus far.
Right. Yeah, that's so scary. I mean, for not even just for you, but for your family to witness that and just see you, going in that direction. It's definitely eye-opening. And, a lot of times what happens with it is very common for, anorexia patients to have heart issues or have their heart stop because if you think about it, the food that we eat, the nutrition that we have in our body, we require, minerals and vitamins for our body to function. So, low potassium, for example, that's a reason that can cause your heart to stop or go crazy. Even I've in the past have gone to the ER and my potassium was low and they had to give me like the potassium cocktail and put me on fluids and stuff, and I didn't even have an eating disorder. It can just happen. So I can imagine when you're not consuming, the vitamins and nutrients that you need, that's where all these things, no potassium and magnesium, that's when your heart, that your heart electricity requires that. And then, like low vitamin D, that is something that can cause the period to go away. It can cause depression. Low vitamin D, that can cause migraines, tingling sensation, anxiety and irritation, headaches, all that stuff. So, I mean, the list goes on. So, when it just kind of goes to show how crucial, what you eat and put in your body and how important it is. And you really see that when you're deprived of it.
And what I didn't realize too is, not just the physical things, like, I mean, I didn't even think about the fact that, like, physically, you think bulimia are the people who, like, their teeth rot. Mm-hmm. I lost all 4 of my back teeth because they just literally crumbled because I had no nutrients in my body.
Right.
Like,
and
absolutely.
Your hair. Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, thinking back now that I have like a clear head and everything, there was so much I underestimated, like as far as nutrients goes, like you were saying, not only physically, but mentally. When you're not properly nourishing yourself, or let alone like barely eating, you, like, your brain, you literally go crazy. Like, you don't think the thoughts that you normally would if you were nourished.
Right. And I imagine it probably makes the situation worse because you aren't thinking clearly, and it's like, I see how that once you can just spiral from that point.
Oh yeah.
So once you started your recovery, like, what are things that you basically have had to pick up and learn and make a habit into your life, like a routine? And what are things that have helped you that you still use today, or maybe new things that you're trying?
So definitely therapy has been a huge thing for me, and to really build a whole support team. So I know who I can reach out to when I'm struggling, because, 3.5 years in recovery, I've relapsed. I've fallen back. I've fallen off track. But what's gotten me back on is the support system. And what I kind of like to call it is I have this support system of people, like my therapist, my family, my close friends, my boyfriend, like the people I trust, certain people in the yoga community, things like that, But I also have this kind of mental toolbox for just like myself, for things like when I'm feeling triggered or my anxiety is really bad. Like there's things I can do. Like I have this whole list of, okay, go outside in nature. Like, you know, the whole name 5 things you see, 4 things you smell, 2 things you touch, blah, blah, blah.
And that's called grounding, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or a meditation, reading a book. Sometimes, you know, even things like for me, if I'm feeling alone or like really bad anxiety, even like making a future plan with somebody will like kind of put me in a better mood, or it's just really building up that support system and that team, because I don't agree with anybody that says they did recovery alone. There's no way there. So it's very important to have a system.
What if someone doesn't really have a huge support system? Like, what would you recommend? Say it's someone who, you know, maybe they aren't in a relationship and their family's not around, or maybe they're not supportive.
Right. Which is a lot, because you know what? A lot of people don't understand eating disorders and they kind of steer away. Like when I started recovery and really put it out there publicly on social media, I did get a lot of support, but I did get also a lot of people that pushed me away. So that's hard. Which is why I'm so grateful for, like, we don't necessarily have any eating disorder support groups around here, but I've found and made friends with so many people through social media and support groups specifically for eating disorders or anorexia. Few of these people I've actually ended up meeting in real life. And
cool.
Yeah. But also there is something called, so NEDA is a great resource, National Eating Disorder Association. They have a lot of different pockets and resources. Even better though, there's something called Project Heal. It's a nonprofit and it helps people who are in recovery from an eating disorder get the funds they need and the support they need, whether it be for a therapist, whether it be for inpatient, outpatient, because it is so expensive and most insurances do not cover it. And they'll not only set you up with that, but they'll set you up with support. So like somebody that can kind of mentor and help you through and things like that. And then when you're recovered, you can do that for somebody if you want.
Oh, that's great.
So, and they have a ton of funds available. They are always on top of helping people and reaching out, and they are amazing.
So tell me about, you know, healing and yoga. You know, so I know still it's been, did you say 3 years?
Yeah, like 3.5.
Yeah, and how would you say the healing process has been? We're 3 years later. I mean, are there still some residual side effects that you are dealing with? And what do you do to kind of continue to heal?
So I really had to learn that I had this idea in my head that once I hit 1 year in recovery, it would all be like gone. I wish. But for me, and not necessarily for everybody, but I've kind of come to the terms with like, this will always be my stress trigger. It no longer consumes my life, but if I get super stressed and I'm not hyper aware, then it can easily slip back in and try to take control. So I actively stay in therapy. I actually just started something called EMDR, which I think I was telling you about when we hung out. It's one of the best treatments for trauma.
Which is what's the M? Movement.
Meditation movement therapy.
Okay.
So what it does is, I've only had 2 sessions so far. So EMDR.com is an awesome resource for all of this. It's like the official website. But basically what it does is your therapist is trained in it. And they put you back in the moment of trauma, which can be scary. But what they do is they do this eye desensitization and you follow it for brief periods of time. So when you're back in this trauma, part of your brain is focused on this movement. So it's not as powerful on your brain when you're processing this memory and this trauma. And I cannot explain to you, like you were saying, the things that have come up that you're just now connecting, and you're like, how have I never connected this? I have had so many profound moments in these last 2 weeks that I'm like,
Wow.
and I didn't know this, but come to find out, all major eating disorder inpatient recovery centers has somebody 24 hours on site that is certified in EMDR because it's so effective for,
Wow.
yeah. So that's really cool.
I've
And I
heard a
think,
lot of great things about it for sure.
yeah. And I think it's so important, you know, one, to talk with your therapist and make sure you're ready to put yourself back in that trauma. That's why we waited so long, because I wasn't ready. But I think it's also important to realize, like, just because you're 3, 4, 5 years in recovery, it doesn't mean you shouldn't still seek treatment.
Oh, I think everybody should have a therapist, even if they have like a great, happy, you know,
Oh yeah.
life that seems normal. Like it's just so important. Like, and even if you get to a point in therapy where you feel like you've made a significant, difference, and, I still don't think it should be done.
Yeah,
I still
no.
think it's something that should just forever be continued, to learn the tools to manage stress. Because, I mean, one of the things I've been thinking heavily about lately, which is something I might even try to incorporate in the future, that I might try to work with, is that, junior high and high school, like they don't have any classes that teach you, how to, look for signs of abuse in a relationship, or how to manage stress, or how to get through a difficult situation, or if there's been trauma in your life, what do you do? They don't offer those kind of lessons.
Yeah.
I started thinking about that because at first I was like, oh, they don't teach you, how to build your credit, and or how that you can ruin your credit, and simple things like that. And then I just started going deeper, and I was like, wow, that's such a hard time in your life, which I imagine is definitely where it started for you and most
Oh yeah.
people. And we never recover from that. We drag that on, these traumas and these experiences, for so many years, and it's not until a point until we get to rock bottom where most of us have to desperately try to swim, and I
Well,
think it would be great to start so much sooner and at a younger age.
yeah. And it's so hard. And I know the stigma is slowly changing about mental health and everything like that, about, talking about it more. But, it still is partly that whole, the biggest thing I've gotten, because on my Instagram, I'm very open about my recovery, how I feel, all of that. And, the biggest thing I've grasped from that is it's like nobody wants to talk about it, but everybody wants to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just about initiating the conversation and really talking about it, and being like, hey, it's okay if you're struggling. Like, we all struggle at some point. Reach out. Like, there's all these different
Yeah.
resources. It's just half the time they don't even know about the resources.
It's so true. Actually, because we kind of sometimes will record our podcast like a couple in a row. So, today Amber and I are gonna do boundaries, and I think that's episode 8, and episode 9. I hope I'm not wrong. Is gonna be toxic positivity.
Yeah.
And so for me, toxic positivity is so important because, um, I really want to break the stigma of that, because I feel like people are scared to talk about these issues, and you're so brave to open up, about everything that you've experienced, which is great, because now you're teaching other people. The way I see it is like, look, I'm taking one for the team. I'm gonna be vulnerable and expose myself, so that way somebody else who was like me at one point can have this to lead them or guide them during a difficult time. And with toxic positivity, which we're going to go over, or I guess this is episode 10, so you can go back to episode 9. It's just, there's been so many times like in my life where it's just like, oh, you'll be fine, it's all going to work out, and suck it up, and just think positive, and you'll get better. That's not how it works. Like, you got to put in the hard work. You have to put in the hard work. You can't, everything that you've been through, you can't just, oh, it'll get better, and think positive. Like, you're busting your ass,
Right. Right.
to get where you are today.
And, you know, I think a lot of people too, it's frustrating because I've had people tell me the same thing. They're like, I think the most frustrating comment, please don't ever say this to anybody listening. Don't ever say this to somebody in eating disorder recovery. Just eat.
Oh,
If it were just that easy, I would. Like, it's so much.
Oh, wow. I can almost relate because when I was at my worst with my heart and my health, I wasn't like digesting food. I mean, I was eating, but like I lost like 40 pounds like rapidly in a really short amount of time. And it was horrible because number one, people at first, they gave me so many compliments. People were like, you look great. And on the inside, I'm
Yep.
like, I'm dying. Like
Yep.
I'm so sick and these people are complimenting me. It just stung so bad. And then once I started to get to the point where I was like getting too thin, I mean, I had no control over this. I was eating, I was trying to like I wasn't doing this on purpose. Not that you're eating disorders you are doing it on purpose. You're not either. But it was frustrating for this woman came up to me and she was just like, "Girl, you need to eat a cheeseburger." And it's like, first of all, who says a cheeseburger is like the best nutrition?
Why does everybody say
why
a
is a cheeseburger? And
why can't it be tacos?
Right? Yeah, girl, you need a taco. Thank you, or an ice cream sandwich.
Yes.
But it was it was so frustrating because it was just like I had so many emotions like whirling at that time, and I can imagine being in like your position where you can't eat and mentally you have this block and this is a way that you're coping with something, and to have these people you know just say something so stupid as to eat a damn cheeseburger.
Yeah.
If only it were that simple. Like instead things to say could be like maybe more encouraging, or like, do you need help, or do you want to talk? I mean, what are things that you wish people said instead?
Not so much targeting like, like, oh my God, are you okay? Because I'd be like, yeah, what do you mean? Like, I'd get I was very, when you're in that state, that's another thing of like malnourishment, every and anything is going to set you off. Like, I remember one time there was a guy in the parking lot at Walmart and he said the same thing. He said, "Girl, you need to eat a cheeseburger." And I turned around and I'm not kidding you, I flipped out on him. I still to this day kind of like feel bad that he got some backlash, but I know he's never going to say that again. So I guess that's good. But I think, what I would prefer, like if you have somebody in your life that you think struggling, it is hard because it's even hard for me. I struggle with even knowing what to say. I actually have somebody in my life right now that I really, really, and deep down in my heart, feel like she's struggling with an eating disorder. And I'm struggling to know what to say to her. But I think the best thing you can do is just be in contact with them and, ask them, how are you doing? How are things going? And most of the time, if you're pretty close with them or they feel comfortable with you, they'll open up to you to a certain extent, at least, and kind of you'll get a better idea.
I agree. I feel like, the best thing anyone can do to really just support you is to just be there. Because I know, like, and listen, because, I mean, there's been so many times where, like, I've been stressed out or scared or depressed or whatever, and trying to talk or open up to friends, and then it's like they'll just kind of change the subject, and it's like, then it makes me feel okay. I can't talk to them about
right. And it's like,
and I pull away.
It's like, ask me questions. Like if you don't understand about something, ask me questions. Like, especially being in recovery, I think one of the things I've appreciated the most from friends and family that know I'm in recovery are the ones that have came up to me and said, hey, like I did some research on this. Is this like, I was reading this and this. Do you relate to that? Or, stuff like that. And I'm like, wow, they actually took the time to look into what I was struggling with, and they may not understand, but like, that says a lot, that they thought about you and they took the time. And even like you know, like when you and I hung out, I had no idea. I don't even know what it's called. What is it that you have again?
Oh, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
Yeah. And I was like, what is that? You know, like, because I don't know, but I want to know, like, I want to ask you more questions about it. And I feel like opening that door, no matter the situation, like letting them know that you're there and you're an open ear and you may not know everything, makes a huge difference.
It really does. You know, if yeah, it's a great point. Like if you're in the dark about someone, what they're going through, and you don't know, like then maybe do a little research. Because if you care, that's like the best thing you can do to show them. You know, like my husband's super supportive of me, and like it's just crazy how much he knows. Like he knows I'm getting dizzy and feeling like I'm gonna pass out before I do. Like I'll get up and he's like run over and caught me. I'm like, what are you doing? Oh.
Yeah.
And so I mean, it's because he cares, and that's how he shows it. And if you want to be a friend, if you care about someone, you know, then people need more than just to discuss, you know, like what they did that day, and what they bought shopping, or what they had for lunch, or whatever. Like, you know, it friendships, if you want a true friendship with someone, like then you need to be able to make people feel comfortable opening up, I feel like.
Right. And, you know, I'm glad you brought up the significant other thing too, because that's another thing that is very complex about, you know, things like this is, as a significant other, it's just as important, if not more important, for you to learn about and understand what your significant other is struggling with. For example, like my boyfriend, he's the same way. Like, we will go to the gym and like I won't even notice I'm doing it, but after, like if I'm having a stressful day, I won't eat after the gym, and he'll be like, you need to eat, and I'm like, I will, and he's like, it's been an hour, like you need to eat. And you know,
That's great.
Yeah, and even things like you know, like I said, I still routinely go to therapy, and him and I have been together about a year, so he's going to go to therapy with me soon, and not that anything's wrong, but just
no,
because,
I think that's great.
as somebody who's dating somebody in recovery from an eating disorder, like there are so many things, one, that you can learn in therapy and understand about your significant other, but two, it also gives them the opportunity to be one-on-one with your therapist and ask them questions that they necessarily wouldn't ask in front of you.
I think that's such a great idea. I love
you know, because he could, you know, maybe he's wondering like, how come she's so weird sometimes about like the way I cook,
or
this
when you're
food,
irritated, or like, you know, what's going on in her head when she, you know. I think that's great. That's such a good idea, because a lot of people, I think, are afraid to bring their significant other to therapy because they're worried that that means or sounds that
there's a problem. Yeah.
But guess what? Like, you could be totally awesome and bring your significant other, and then you'll be even more awesome.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that? I think that's great. I mean, if you're solid, you know, but there's a couple things, like, you know, because you can be, you know, the perfect match, but like, you know, like when you guys get to an argument, maybe you suck at arguing and getting through an argument together.
Right.
You know, and so to be able to strengthen that and learn the tools to just, I mean, this is just going to help you to be long lasting and healthier,
and you know,
and
not just for
stronger.
him, but you know, my thing too, you know, I was thinking the other day about how I have such bad anxiety, and you know, it's not as bad as it was anymore, but it's always been severe, and it's gotten a lot better, but I tend to forget he has it too, because I'm so focused on like my recovery, and because he's like the strong one and always like more solid or whatever. But, you know, sometimes I forget, you know, he's a human too. You know, he struggles or gets stressed out sometimes too. So that helps as well to kind of open that realm of like, hey, this is what you could be doing for your significant other too. And it's hard, you know, when you have something like an eating disorder or mental health or something that's very consuming, to like remind yourself, hey, you know, my significant other may feel this way sometimes too, after like a stressed out day or whatever. So it's just really kind of helped me open my mind more.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great, thank you for that. And then I think my last thing would be, like my question would be, so like what is your nutrition like today? Like what do you eat? How do you stay nourished?
So it's really weird because when you first start recovery and you have to have a certain amount of calories and nutrients and blah, 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 they pretty much give you shopping lists, things like that. And a lot of these shopping lists and things are kind of old school. Like I wouldn't necessarily pick out like Lucky Charms and like super processed food.
Wow.
But it's part of recovery because you're supposed to overcome that and be like, I'm going to be fine if I eat a piece of candy.
Yeah.
Like things aren't going to end.
You know what? That's true because, I know for me, like processed stuff can really make me sick because I have so many sensitivities, but that's not like everybody. So I think it's a good point to do that because I feel like some people can develop similar to like anorexia just because they get these complexes with what they're eating. Like I know people who are so extreme to like everything must be perfection and healthy with their food, but yet they don't care about their shampoo, they don't care about the makeup, they don't care about what they're wearing, the clothes and the chemicals on that, but hey, my food must be,
They've actually coined that as a name. It's orthorexia, where you're obsessed with healthy eating and working out and exercising.
I'm writing that down.
Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's like a newer form of an eating disorder.
I knew it. I knew that had to exist because...
And I fell into that for a while because after I was off, like having to get like Lucky Charms or whatever, I was like, I can't digest that stuff, like that processed stuff. So I like became on the other end of like obsessive about like healthy and exercise, no processed foods and blah, blah, blah. And that's when I found myself in a relapse. So I had to kind of find that middle ground.
It seems like it's like the gateway drug to it. You know what I mean? Because like for me with my having chronic illness, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, there's a lot of digestive issues. And I got to say, like they trigger a lot of problems for me. So this month I've had like 3 really bad episodes. It's like I get these adrenaline surges, like basically my digestive system sets off my vagus nerve, and my heart rate and blood pressure go crazy. Well, like that whole, after the second day in a row, I was like freaked out. I didn't eat that whole day because I was scared and I was just like, what can I eat? I mean, I've cut so many things out, and it scares me when I get like that because it makes me feel like, I don't know. I mean, it really messes my head. I was so depressed that day. I was scared to eat. I mean, fortunately, I ended up eating a little bit that night, and then the next day I was eating like normal again. But I can see how that could continue.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I definitely, I struggle with it from time to time. But I would say overall, my biggest thing is plant-based. I'm definitely plant-based. Having all of those nutrients from plants has made the biggest difference in my body physically and mentally and emotionally. Like even down to anxiety is not as bad anymore.
Yeah. And you have the tell me about the garden tower, the plant tower.
Oh yeah, Tower Garden.
I want to get one.
So it's aeroponics. So it was invented by NASA and Epcot. And the roots basically hang in air and it uses less water and then it grows 3 times faster. So you get like really high quality produce. So that's where I get a lot of my produce. And then I take the capsules, the Juice Plus capsules with the fruits, the vegetables, and the berries just to ensure I get that every day. And
awesome.
that's made a world of a difference. But I do, I make sure to have I made a cobbler and I ate half of it yesterday.
Nice.
It's fine. And just really consciously thinking about the way I'm talking to myself after things like that.
Oh yeah.
So a lot of self-talk for sure. But I think, the biggest thing I would remind people of that are struggling or think they might be struggling with an eating disorder, especially anorexia, because it teeters that line of death.
Absolutely.
Don't underestimate it, because I was that person that thought I was the exception. I thought I could keep losing weight and I could have all these issues and I could keep passing out and I was just untouchable. Like, I'm not going to be that statistic. And I can tell you 100% that night that I passed out and my heart stopped, I had all these things come flooding into my mind of like these wrongs I didn't make right, all these regrets I had. It's kind of like the whole people say your life flashes before your eyes. It does, because you're not ready to go. And it's terrifying when you realize you're at the point with your body where you're not in control of it because you are so thin. And that was where I really messed up, is I thought I was the exception. And I got so I'm a miracle. It's a miracle I'm here. And that's why I am so open and honest about it. Because I really, really feel like I speak for the people who didn't make it that wish they would have. Mm-hmm. And it is such an epidemic in our country and people underestimate it. I actually want to read this statistic. I posted it the other day. You might have seen it. It says 1 in 5. That's how many anorexia sufferers die. And it says 20%. My friend just had someone in her family diagnosed with cancer. He has an 84% survival rate. You are more likely to survive cancer than you are to survive anorexia.
Wow.
And,
That's
you know,
crazy.
that when I read that statistic, it really put it into perspective for me, how real it was. And
will you send that to me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's my newest post on Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah.
And speaking of Instagram, because we're going to start wrapping up,
Okay.
how can people find you? Tell me about your Instagram and how people can find you in case they want to reach out and follow your journey.
Okay, so my Instagram is tattoos, yoga, and recovery. It's literally how it's spelled out. And my thing's public, and I pretty much post mostly yoga pictures, but all my captions are like this long. Just me spilling my heart out. But you know, I can't tell you how many people have reached out to me through that, and have felt comfortable opening up to me. And I've even had like parents, like I had a lady last Christmas, I'll never forget, Christmas Eve, she sent me a message on Instagram and was like, I'm in tears and I'm a mess. I just dropped my daughter off at inpatient because I had no choice. And she's like, I don't even know why I'm messaging you right now. And we ended up having like an hour-long conversation on the phone that night. And yeah, it's amazing what one connection can do for somebody. So don't ever think you can't make a difference, no matter what it is, eating disorder or not, you know. Mm-hmm. One person. Awesome.
And you can find us, Amber and I, the Invisible Diaries at the Invisible Diaries on Instagram too. And the podcast, of course, it's on YouTube. It's on iTunes, or you know, you can find the link on our Instagram as well. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and thank you so much for sharing your story. I learned so much in just this hour. Like I even made like little notes, and I'm gonna check out the emdr.com and Project Heal and the NEDA, the National Eating Disorder Association. Yeah, thank you. That was
Thank
awesome.
you.
Yay. Bye.
Bye.